Did I buy this shirt because it says, Bella, where the hell you been, Loca, on the front? Yes. Yes, I did. Hey guys, what's up? It's Belle. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, and if you've come back, thank you so much. Today, guys, we are doing a video that I have wanted to do for a very long time, but I sort of just like either keep putting it off or just forget to do it. One or the other. But today, you guys, we are going to be talking about all of your bookish, unpopular opinions and bad habits. I've been tossing up either doing just the bad habits or just the unpopular opinions, but I thought let's like throw them all in together because I think it's just fun. I love watching these types of videos as well on BookTube. I think, like, I don't know, they're just so relatable. I love that I never have any unique experiences of my own, you know? Like, I always think I have a unique, like, habit or opinion, and I don't. But it's nice to feel seen, you know what I mean? So I asked you guys over on my Instagram, but then also on my TikTok live that I did last night for some of your favorite, you know, bookish unpopular opinions or bookish bad habits. So yeah, I've got a bunch of them listed on my phone here. So let's get comfy, grab a tea, grab a coffee, get cozy, and let's get right on into the video. Okay, maybe I will start with the Instagram responses first. I put up a little story yesterday just being like, give me a man after midnight, please and thank you. So, God, where do I even start? The first one's actually super interesting. This says, we need to bring back trilogies. How can stories go for longer than 3 books? I totally agree with this. I just recently finished the Shadow Me series. I finished it last week and I can't even tell you, I think there's maybe 10 books in that series, maybe 11 books because there's a mixture of proper novels and novellas. And whilst I absolutely adore every single character in that story, I felt like that series honestly finished at book number 3, which is Ignite Me. Like, the rest was nice, but I really just stayed on just for the characters because I loved them so much. But for me, that series could have been a trilogy and I would have been so happy because I got everything that I needed. The back end of the series, by the way, is at least 6 books. And I was like, was this necessary? I don't know. Do you guys agree with this? I feel like back in the day when, you know, dystopian books were really popular, we had like The Hunger Games, we had The Maze Runner, we had Divergent, we had even like The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. You know, we had all of these trilogies that were super popular, and I feel like if you went on and tried to continue that story, is it considered a money grab? Like, that's sort of what I feel like. And that's why I'm really scared at the moment of starting ACOTAR, well, continuing ACOTAR, because I've read the, sorry, Throne of Glass. I've read ACOTAR. Throne of Glass, I just started rereading. I may have told you guys that I read the first 2 books about 10 years ago now. So I wanted to restart and actually finish the series this time. But the reason that I was putting it off is because it's, I think, 7 books or something. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books. That's a lot. I'm sure the series is worth it. But yeah, I do miss a trilogy. I feel like it's definitely something that's important definitely for dystopian, fantasy, young adult. Trilogies are great. I think with romance at the moment, we're really strongly sticking with interconnected standalones. I like when an interconnected standalone series is maybe 4 or 5 books. I think that's great. No longer. And why I'm happy that there's 5 books is that the story is actually different because it's a different couple each time usually. So that's why it can afford to be quite, you know, a large amount of books. But yeah, if it's like a continuous series, I really feel like we don't need it to be any longer than 3 books. Am I the only one that feels this way? Like, please let a girl know. This one I got a few times and it's actually my bookish bad habit. Flipping to the back of a book to see how many pages it is and then getting a huge spoiler, or what else did I see here? It says reading the last sentence of a book. I got that so many times. That is probably my worst bad habit, and I do it so often and I never learn. So basically, I'll give you guys like an example of when I did this. I went to Melbourne at the beginning of August and I took my book club pick for that month, which was One by One by Frida McFadden. I took that on the plane because it was nice and short and I thought I could read it. It was about a 2-hour plane ride, so I thought I would smash out quite a bit of it. I ended up reading the whole book on the plane, which is insanity. But anyways, I was sitting on the plane and I was sitting next to my stepdad and he was sort of just like, oh, that's a new one, blah, blah, blah. We were chatting. He's like, oh, it looks quite short. I said, yeah, I think it's about like 200 pages or something. Like, let me have a look. So I flipped to the back of the book just to see the page count, and as I did so, I saw a name spoiler. I didn't necessarily read the last line. I do that many times, but I saw like a name spoiler. So then obviously when I started and read the book, I guessed the plot twist straight away and I ruined the book for myself. And that is like literally the worst feeling when you do that to yourself. I need to stop doing it. What I need to do is, if I have the itch and have the urge, I need to go onto Goodreads, because I did that with that. I did it with something else too. I can't remember. I feel like I did it with another book, but it's like, it's something that I truly need to stop doing, because I ruin the books, and then it really inflicts your rating, because whilst the book may be great, it's like the reading experience, at least for me, that I rate upon as well. I definitely rate and critique based on the quality of the book and also the reading experience as a reader. So like, whilst, you know, One by One might have been great, and it probably is a great book, I ruined my reading experience because, you know, when we got to the plot twist, I was like, oh, you know, I was like, oh, I knew it was going to be this, that, and the other. So yeah, don't do it. I'm so serious. Oh, this one's somebody after my own heart. This one says, Icebreaker really wasn't that book, but I loved Wildfire. This one is interesting to me. You guys may know, I am a massive fan of Wildfire. I personally feel like Wildfire is Hannah's favorite book. Everyone's opinions are valid. Everybody has different tastes, but Wildfire to me was just so atmospheric. If you don't know what Wildfire is, it's book 2 in the Maple Hills Interconnected standalone series. It's Russ and Aurora's story. So basically they are 2 college students who meet each other on the night before summer vacation. They meet at like a house party, they hook up, and they sort of don't leave on great terms. They don't really get each other's details. The next morning, both of them are starting jobs at a summer camp as a summer camp counselors, and neither of them know that they're both at the same camp for the summer, and like basically fraternization is not allowed between camp counselors. And the book is just like super atmospheric. Maybe it's just me, but I've always longed to like experience an American summer and do like be a camp counselor. I think it would be so fun. It was just like great friendship groups, hilarious, spicy. So I personally loved Wildfire much more than Icebreaker. Icebreaker is still a 5-star read for me, and Wildfire is still a 5-star read for me. Daydream, the third one, was not for me, but that's all I'm gonna say on that. In terms of the Icebreaker over Wildfire, as I said, I can see why some people would think that Wildfire is better. I just personally feel like Hannah's writing improved so much, and I remember that was one of my like thoughts and like feelings and opinions as I was writing my review, was that her writing just leveled up between Icebreaker and Wildfire, because I think that book was like given a lot of time and love and energy on the editing floor, and I think that's why that book was just so good. And whilst I don't agree with the part that Icebreaker wasn't it, because I really enjoy Icebreaker and I've recommended it to many of my friends who are just getting into reading and they really enjoy it, I do agree with you that Wildfire is immaculate. This person's bad habit is sitting down to read, then scrolling on TikTok for hours instead of reading. I do this so often. Like I said to you guys, I was on TikTok live last night. I do try to do those a couple times a month. I just sometimes get super busy and I forget to do my TikTok lives. Anyways, I was on there and I was like chatting with everybody, and we were talking about how, and so many people were like, oh, I totally just sat down to read, but now I'm stuck on TikTok and I'm watching your live. And I was like, go and read. I do this all the time. And I was also talking about how I keep myself accountable for like trying to make sure I don't spend too much time on social media and I read. And what I was sort of like saying as my advice is, at least what I've put into place, is every day I wake up before I start work and I read for an hour. Now that's not to say you guys have to do that. Even if you want to set like a 10-minute timer or a half an hour timer, 20-minute timer, whatever's manageable for you, I would suggest doing if you want to like get some reading done for the day. Because I know when it's nighttime, if I'm in my bed, the phone is in my hand, it's glued to my hand, and I will not be getting any reading done. So I'm the biggest culprit of sitting down with the intention to read and then doom scrolling on TikTok. It becomes so addictive. And I think like, I don't know if it's me as well, guys, but I've definitely had, you know, when you're on TikTok for such a long time and that little ad pops up that says you need to get off and do something because you've been on here for such a long time. Yeah, that happens to me far too many times. Also, I'm trying to film a video for you guys at the moment where I do swapping my screen time for reading. And when I tell you guys, it's actually scary the numbers that I have, like for how many hours I'm on a day. The majority of the days are between like 8 to 9 hours a day on the phone, which is just nuts. It's actually like insane to see. If you were to read for the amount of time that you were on your phone for the day, you would get so much reading done. It's kind of insane. Okay, this one here just says breaking versus not breaking the spines of books. I'm assuming this means like what's my take on it. I actually viscerally feel sick when I see a cracked spine, when I hear someone cracking a spine, when I accidentally, like when I'm reading a book with a hard spine, if I start feeling the little, you know, the beginnings of a crack happening, it's actually the most devastating thing. Like I feel pain. I feel like someone's cracking my spine, and not in the good way. Like I feel like it's a cardinal sin. You know, that's how I feel about people cracking the spines. I sometimes will be like, again, on TikTok or Instagram, and sometimes people just will do it. They will hurt the... I just see them do it, and I'm going, why are you hurting these books? What do they do to you? Okay, like I am just the biggest believer in like, why are you doing that? You paid for that, most likely, and you're wrecking it. You're wrecking that book. Each to their own. I understand that cracking a spine can be, you know, easier for you to read the book, makes it more comfortable when you're reading. I get it. Get a Kindle. If a book is too difficult for you to hold or to read, get a Kindle. Because I think if you're cracking the spines, it's actually so offensive. I'm drinking out of an Easter Bunny cup like a week before Halloween. Yes, mind your own business. Each their own. It's just not for me, babes. Okay, this one says, unpopular opinion is that Lakefront Billionaires by Lauren Asher is superior to Dreamland Billionaires. I have many thoughts. I think my first is that I have to disagree, and here's why. So for those who don't know what the Lakefront Billionaires and the Dreamland Billionaires are, they're both by Lauren Asher. They're interconnected standalone series. So the Dreamland Billionaires is a completed trilogy at the moment, follows three brothers who've been left an inheritance by their grandfather, but in order to unlock their own portion of the inheritance, each brother has to complete a certain task that's been written in the will, right? That's Dreamland Billionaires. And then the Lakefront Billionaires is set in like a neighboring town, and each book again just sort of focuses on like a different billionaire, because that series is not completed yet. So in terms of Dreamland Billionaires, I gave the fine print and terms and conditions both 5 stars. I think Final Offer got a 4.5 star from me. Terms and Conditions is one of my favorite books ever. Even the fine print, I like honestly just felt was so immaculate, and that series was great. The last book I think was just a little bit too long, and I didn't really gel with the characters as much, but I think the trilogy as a whole was like just super strong. Then if you're looking at the Lakefront Billionaires, Love Redesigned is a big book, and both of these books are massive. They're around 600 pages each, I want to say. Love Redesigned, I gave 5 stars. I read that this year, and I read it in a day. It was insane. It was like super addictive. I loved that. I think that is probably Lauren's best written book so far. And then Love Unwritten, I think it was just a little bit too long. I was talking about this the other day, I think maybe on my TikTok or something, where I would love to do a video going back and reflecting on the books that I gave 5 stars and seeing if I still think they're 5 stars, because the reason I thought of this video is because I was thinking about Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher, because I loved it. At the time, it was really beautiful. It made me cry. It had a lot of heart, had a lot of like healing and whatnot. But like, I don't find myself thinking about it all the time. I don't know, it didn't like stick with me as much as like I think about Terms and Conditions all the time, which is from the Dreamland Billionaires. Yeah, I think both series have their merits. Like I said, Dreamland Billionaires had like the stronger books so far, and then Lakefront Billionaires, I think Love Redesigned's her best written book, but Love Unwritten was a bit of a, it was okay for me. It's also hard to like comment as well, because obviously that series isn't finished yet. So maybe when, I don't know if it's going to be just a trilogy. I think the next one comes out next year. It's Lorenzo and someone. I'm so excited for that book. We'll just have to see what happens when we get there. I thought I'd just throw this one in here before we move on from the Instagram ones. This one just says buying books and not reading them. That's my worst habit. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people say this. I definitely think that buying books and reading books are 2 separate hobbies. And I even said that today. I was at the store with my mom and my aunt, and I was like, my mom was like, oh, you know, I've just got all of these books that I buy and I never read. And I said, Mum, there are 2 hobbies in life, reading books and buying books. You can collect books, have them as trophies on your shelf, or you can read them, and they're both, you know, they're 2 separate hobbies. I mean, look at my room. I was even saying today, I was like, you know, if I had that principle that you had, Mum, of, you know, waiting to finish the books that I have before I buy any more, I mean, I'm sure I'd probably have my own house by now and many other assets. Instead, I have paper, from a tree in my room. So look, I'm sure I would have many other things if I did not continuously buy books, but I don't know what it is. I mean, like, even though I have some books sitting on my shelf from at least 2 to 3 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago from my really old books, but you know, I go to pick them up and I go, A, what is this about? And two, why did I buy this? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I just go, I don't want to read this, and then I will go to the store and I will buy something else. So what I've said to myself that I wanted to do this year is with series, I want to purely be buying just the first book in the series. I have to read that first before I buy the remainder of the series, because I made the mistake. I do it with a lot, but the one that I sort of think about the most is Magnolia Parks. So I bought all of those beautiful, you know, indie edition versions of Magnolia Parks because I obviously heard that they were going to go out of print for the new UK covers. They've now been brought back, so whatever. But of course I rush bought them thinking that, you know, I own the first one, I've got to buy the rest before they all go out of print. I hadn't read the first one at the time. I bought all of them, all 4 of them or 5 of them, I think there are. They cost me about $33 or $35 each, which is just honestly highway robbery. So I bought all of them. I then read the first book and I didn't like it. Sorry, the cheating trope's just not for me. And I just didn't, I thought it was awful. People like that and I understand why you might, but that's just not for me. So I didn't know that it was the cheating trope before I went in. And if I had known, I probably wouldn't have even bought the entire series because it's just not for me. So I ended up selling that series. However, I spent so much money buying them that this year I said, I'm not making that mistake. So I've been really good. But in saying that, if I just have the first book of a series sitting on my shelf, you know, I'm thinking of something like Shatter Me, I'm thinking of something like Caraval, things like that, or Serpent in the Wings of Night. Funnily enough, it's been Romanticies this year that I have done this with. But of course, I will read the one book that I own and then I need to read the others straight away. So what do I go and do? I buy them anyways. And then I still have books sitting on my shelf from 2 to 3 years ago that I couldn't tell you why I bought them, what they're about, or why I would even want to read them. And that's sad. I'm definitely starting to think about how I'm going to structure my TBRs for next year and how I'm going to force myself to read the books that I have and definitely go on a book buying ban because it needs to happen. I'm sorry. Okay, now one from one of my TikTok live last night. This one says, bad habit, always telling myself that I'm going to read a certain book next, but then never reading it. I do this all the time. This is sort of feeding in from the last one. Obviously, you guys see that I do my monthly TBRs, and I've been pretty good sticking to those for the last couple of months. But usually throughout the month, I will have like my last now next, I think I usually do. So I'll have like, this is the last book I read. I got to make sure I review it. This is the book that I'm reading now, and then I know what I'm going to do next. So usually I'll sort of follow that cycle. I usually try to like break my genres up. So if I'm currently reading a romance book, I'll probably look at reading a romantasy next. Or if I'm reading romance, I might just change like the subgenre. So it might turn into like, if I'm reading cowboy, I might read sports, I might read dark afterwards. So I usually have them lined up. But this month I've been so bad. Like unless I have to get like a certain review out or whatnot, I've been really like wanting to pick completely off my TBR because this month, obviously because it's October, I wanted to do all like spooky, Halloween, cozy, a lot of like fantasy. However, this month, all I have read is the last 4 books in the Shatter Me series. I read The Striker by Anna Huang, I've read Crossroads by Devney Perry, and I'm now reading Grimstone by Sophie Lark, which none were on my TBR except for The Striker. Then I said to myself, okay, the next book I read, it needs to be from the TBR because I'm not going to read any of these spooky books till probably October next year. Like I need to read them now and I'm not gonna do it. It's so, I have to do it. This next one is a bad habit as well, and it says I look up on TikTok all the spicy chapters and then I skip to them. I do this all the time and that's actually so bad. I did it more, I want to say, last year, especially when I had like my Kindle and I was using, well, I do still have my Kindle, but when I was using Kindle Unlimited a little bit more. Last year, everybody was really loving Pucking Around, I think it was, by Emily Rath, and I owned the physical book and it was ginormous, right? And I knew that it was like a why choose sort of vibe, sports, romance, blah, 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 and it was huge, right? And I was just like, I just don't know if I can ever pick that book up. Like, what do you have to say? That's 600 pages in a romance book. That's another opinion I have. Romance books should not be any longer than 500 and maybe 600 pages. I'm the firmest believer that like, what do you have to say? Anyways, so this spicy pure spicy romance book, Why Choose romance book, was like over 600 pages. It was huge, right? And I said, I want to know what everyone's talking about. And it was really bad and I probably shouldn't have done this. But I went onto TikTok and I looked up the spicy chapters. I then downloaded it on my Kindle and I sat there and I went through and I read like most of the spicy scenes. I think as readers, we're allowed to decide if we have the intention to read a book. You know, like look, our time's precious as well. Like a lot of us, we have jobs, we have other, like university, we study, we travel, like there's all different things that we do. So I think our time's precious, and if you know, don't want to read a book that everybody is sort of like talking about, like don't force yourself to read it, you know? While I never had the intention of probably reading this book ever, I wanted to see what people were talking about. So that's why I went and like looked up the spicy chapters. Am I alone in doing this? I do see a lot of the videos floating around, especially for like the Twisted series, the Cat and Mouse duet, I see it a lot for. Sometimes Dreamland Billionaires, I see it for that as well. I see people will like mark the spicy chapters. So fair, we're all horny little devils. Okay, next one says, I honestly feel like though once you go dark romance, there is no going back. I disagree with this only because I sort of was like, when I first got back into reading 2 years ago, as a kid, I read primarily dystopian, young adult, like a little bit of romance. That was my primary genre. But when I got back into it a couple of years ago, I was only reading romance because that's what my taste was. And that's what my taste is mainly now as an adult. So I was reading just your standard, like, you know, what was popular back at that time? Like The Hating Game, The Spanish Love Deception, Tessa Bailey, you know, all of those sort of staples, light, fluffy, giddy, spicy romance books. And that's what I was primarily reading. And then I started dipping my toe into like, you know, the Billionaire. So of course I read like Lauren Asher, I read Anna Huang. I then started to go into Elsie Silver and then everything else that was popular last year. But then I discovered the lovely world of dark romance. I read like the Never After series by Emily McIntyre, Cat and Mouse duet, everything by H.D. Carlton, Penelope Douglas, the Mind F series. So they're all incredible books and I love dark romance as a genre so much. I think there's something so compelling about it and it's so unique. They have some of the best plots. Some dark romances are all just spicy and I don't love that, but some of the dark romance books are so good. They're definitely intense. So like if you're looking to dabble into dark romance, please check your trigger warnings because some of them can be insane. That being said, personally, I feel like I have to have a variety. Like that's why this year I've branched out as well into like a few more thrillers and doing my romantasy this year, because sometimes romance can get a bit stale, even dark romance. So I always still find myself primarily saying that my main genre is, you know, adult romance, like your fluffy, cute sports romances, billionaire romances, things like that. Still love dark romances, but I just go back and forth. I feel like I haven't stayed in the dark romance. Everybody is different. And of course, like once you find the genre that you love, that ignites your love for reading, that is incredible and that's amazing. And that's where you gotta stay. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one. Next I have bookish bad habits. When I get to a good scene in a book, I skip to the dialogue to get through faster. That is so good. I do this in a boring scene. I'm sorry. If I'm like especially in the back half of a book and I'm not loving it, but it's not at a point where like I'm gonna DNF. If I'm not loving it and I kind of just want to get through it, I will sort of skip all the jargon and I'll just read like that's so terrible. But I will read just the dialogue. I mean, the same can be said, especially if it's like a book that has a lot of, like a scene that's got a lot of tension in it, or a moment that I know is super exciting, or it's like the penultimate moment between a couple. Of course, I'm going to be hyper fixated and focused on the dialogue, but I'll still read the entire page. I mainly just do this like during, like I said, parts of the book that I'm either like feeling a bit bored, it feels a bit slow, or I'm just a little bit like, yeah, disinterested, you know, that's sort of what I will do. I have a bone to pick with this next unpopular opinion. It says, my worst unpopular opinion is that I didn't like Gem from the Clockwork Angel series, which is the Infernal Devices trilogy by Cassandra Clare. For those who don't know, the like Shadowhunter Chronicles, you're probably familiar with the Mortal Instruments or the Shadowhunters TV show. They're all books. The series is so so incredible. Like, you will become so addicted if you read these books. I truly even believe, like, if you are an adult, you will love these books. They're such a perfect mix of your fantasy elements, but it's got really good friendships. The romance plot is really strong. Like, it's all super, super interesting. It's got something in there for literally everybody. So how the Shadowhunter Chronicles is broken up is, I believe there is 4 main series. Yeah, there's 4 main series, but they all take place in like different timelines. They are somewhat interconnected though. So it's based around these beings called shadow hunters. They are part human, part angel, and they are basically like the warriors who rid the world of demons, right? It's just incredible. And as I was saying, each series takes place in a different timeline. So the first book chronologically is the Infernal Devices trilogy, as this comment's referring to, and it is set in, I think, the 1800s in England, Victorian England. Again, I love the word atmospheric, but it really is set in like that steampunk type of that vibe, but it's also like, again, the Victorian, like Bridgerton-ish era. Correct me if I'm wrong. That series follows Tessa Gray, and there is like a love triangle in that series. I won't say like who it's between or what it is. But anyway, there's a lovely character in that series called Jem Carstairs, and he's like not the most favorite person, but I love that guy. I low-key was saying this in my last video that I did. I was talking about romance tropes and I was talking about love triangles, and I say that I usually do not like love triangles at all, because I think A, you know who she's gonna pick, and 2, I just don't care to see her interact with the other guy. Like, I just don't, or the other girl. Like, I literally do not care. The one exception to that rule is I love the Infernal Devices trilogy, because I mean, I have my favorite, and I know like my favorite man in that little scenario, but I actually love both men that are like vying for her attention, and I love the scenes with them. Yeah, I could cry. So as much as I respect your opinion, I have to strongly disagree, and I would love to do a reread of this trilogy at some point. It's just so good. Okay, this same person actually sent another one through, and it says, another unpopular opinion I have is that authors are overusing book talk tropes to advertise their books. I can definitely see this being a thing. There's been a lot of discourse lately around book talk and the type of books that book talk is influencing, and like the books that are now really popular because of book talk, and that then influencing how authors are writing their books, and it's just become a whole thing. But I'm gonna use an example, and before I even talk about this, I love Tessa Bailey. She's one of my favorite authors, and you guys can't make me disagree, because I just love her so much, and I think all of her books, genuinely some of the funniest books, and like some of the spiciest books. She just knows how to write her books. Okay, so earlier this year, Tessa released Fangirl Down, which is the first book in, what is this series called? Big Shots. This series is called Big Shots. Anyway, Fangirl Down was the first book in that series. It was basically about like a golfer, right? And I'm sure you guys have seen when authors now are sort of, you know, promoting their books and advertising the books before they come out, they sort of put up these little images with, they'll have the book in the center, and then around them they'll have all of these tropes like pinging off the side of the book. For that particular book, I believe one of the things was like, touch her and you die, which, as a lot of us sort of know, that's usually reserved for like dark romance or mainly fantasy and romantasy, because I feel like the circumstances, you know, allow for that type of trope. And I think because that is such a popular and beloved trope in the reading community, I think, as this sort of opinion is referring to, authors are now slipping these tropes into the books because they know it will sell, and that's wonderful. But again, unfortunately, this sort of promotion got a bit of backlash because people were going, why are we using that for a romance book about a golfer? And look, I think that an author should promote the book however they want to promote it. But I think what this, you know, this comment is referring to is that I think it's getting a bit too much now. So for those who have seen my monthly reading wrap-ups or saw my reading journal look through, each time I read a book, and how I keep track of books and remember what they're even about is I keep a reading journal, and as I'm reading a book, I will also like make notes on my phone, and I will list off all of the tropes. And when I go to like sit down and journal it, sometimes I'll go, oh my gosh, there's like 6 different tropes in this book. Like, that's a lot of tropes. So I can see how sometimes that can potentially get a little bit messy. You know, sometimes you'll get like, let's say Single Dad and the Nanny, you'll get the forbidden romance, you'll get forced proximity, you'll get reverse grumpy sunshine, like all in one book. And like, that's great. But sometimes I think if it goes past that, it can be too tropey. And I think it loses, like, the trope then loses the wow factor. Does that make sense? I think it's like a very fine line now of having your book with tropes, but not too many tropes. Okay, another one I have is, my unpopular opinion is that you should try and read the book version of a TV show / movie first. I don't know if that's unpopular. I mean, I'm usually very much a believer of, if I haven't already read a book that's going to be adapted, like, and it's something that I see coming out and I know it's a book, I will definitely make sure that I read the book before I see the film, because I think that sometimes books that have been made into, you know, TV shows or movies can really ruin or tarnish the original material. And like, that's no shade and no hate, but sometimes I feel like books should just be left as they are. However, that being said, I will always reach for the book before the film, because I think if I tried to do it in reverse, like after knowing how the movie or the film, the movie or the show ends, like I probably won't go back and read the books. The only two things that I think that I've done this with, as a kid, I watched the first Hunger Games movie and then I read all of the books before Catching Fire came out. So that's one thing. But again, I didn't know the ending of the story, so I was very intrigued to find out what happened next. But the other thing that I did this with was I watched the first 2 seasons of Bridgerton before I read the entire series. Again, an exception to the rule, because I don't know how that series ends. And because it's an interconnected standalone series, each book was very different. So obviously the first 2 seasons were about Simon and Daphne, and then Kate and Anthony. But I was so excited to read Penn and Colin's book. As you guys know, they're just my favorite things in the entire world. So I actually read Romancing Mr. Bridgerton first, and then I went back and I read from Daphne's book all the way through and read all the books, and that's now one of my favorite series of all time. So yeah, I definitely think that reading a series or reading a book before the adaptation is super important, because as I was saying, I think sometimes it can tarnish the book. And I actually say this about one of my favorite books of all time, Red, White and Royal Blue. I really feel like the movie was just, it did not do that book justice. And I always say when I talk about it, that if you've seen the film, please go and read the book, because the book is just on another level. And that's why now I also, another book that just got turned into a film that I love is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. That is one of my favorite young adult books ever. And I have not watched the film yet because I'm actually terrified to have that ruined for me as well. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent. Let me just shut this window and I'll be right back. Okay, and my lucky last for today is my bookish bad habit is buying physical books as trophies. I do this too. I was talking about Kindle Unlimited a little bit earlier, and the way I sort of like justify Kindle Unlimited and how I like sort of sell it to people who don't know what it is you pay a monthly subscription fee. So in Australia, I believe it's around $13 or $14 a month, and for that month you can basically borrow or like hire unlimited amount of books for that monthly fee. So say for instance you could read 10 books a month or 8 books a month, whatever, for $12, which is wonderful. As opposed to you going to the store. In Australia, physical books range from between $12 to $24, $5, whatever, $25. So each time if you were going to purchase those 10 books you read on Kindle, you know, you do say $12 times 10, and then you got like a ridiculous amount of money, right? So that's how I justify Kindle Unlimited. I was like, oh yeah, Kindle Unlimited is just gonna save me money. That's wonderful. However, when I find some absolute bangers on Kindle Unlimited, for example, Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas, the Mind F series by S.T. Abbey, the Cat and Mouse duet, anything by H.D. Carlton, right? If I love them that much, I need to have them on my shelf as a physical trophy, because I don't know about you guys, but there is something so rewarding about like actually finishing a physical book. I feel like I've accomplished something. When I read on my Kindle, it's like, it's great, but I don't have like the physical like endorphin rush and being like, oh, I finished a book, you know? If I did read a book on my Kindle, I then buy it, I go, yeah, I did that. And I can put it on my shelf as a trophy. Yeah, I've done that with quite a few books now. I've got so many beautiful indie editions from Amazon. It's a trophy shelf. You know, sports players, they've got trophies, musicians, like actors, they've all got trophies and awards. You know, my trophies and my awards are my books made out of trees. So yeah. Alrighty, you guys, that is all for today's video. Thank you so much for sticking all the way to the end. If you did, I really, really appreciate it. What are some of your bookish, unpopular opinions or bad habits? I would love to know. Definitely put them in the comments. But second of all, let me know if you guys would like a part 2. I would definitely love to keep doing these. I think maybe like every, you know, a couple of months or so. I'd definitely love to like do an updated thing of this, because as readers, we all have different opinions, as I said, and different thoughts and feelings and habits. And I think it's really funny, like I said, to just sort of see you're not alone in the world, but also just like share opinions and thoughts and feelings. As always, you guys, if you aren't already, you are more than welcome to follow me on TikTok and on Instagram. I will leave my handles on the screen here and in the description. And if you're not already, feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel, and make sure you're hitting that notification bell. That way you're notified each time a brand new video goes up. We are getting to the pointy end of the month, you guys. I cannot believe we only have a couple of months left of the year. I have some very exciting things coming up in November. I believe the next video I'm going to do on this channel is going to be with my mum, and I'm going to be getting her to guess the plot of like books or popular books based off the front covers, because she's just horrendous at doing it, and I think it would be really funny to watch, so keep an eye out for that. And then of course I'm going to have my monthly reading wrap-ups, and yeah, as I said, November is a very exciting month. I've got some really cool things lined up that I can't wait to share with you guys. So yeah, thank you guys so much again for stopping by wherever you are in the world. I hope you have a lovely day or a lovely night, and I will see you all next time. Bye!